That intro is impressive.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. That was my first time with that intro, so I was pretty psyched about it.
I love it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Naked Sales. And don't worry, everyone keeps their clothes on here. We're just going to strip down sales and present the bare essentials of selling today. And my guest today is Amy Bobchek, and she's the CRO of Advocado, and that's Advocado with a D, not avocado. Although in her role, she has worked with avocados from Mexico, which is pretty impressive. Okay, a little bit about Amy. She's a 25-year media industry veteran. She began her career on air hosting a television show in the DC area. Obviously, I didn't. So, Amy, high expectations for you today. If you need to carry the show a little bit, you're the pro. But after moving to the advertising sales of the business, she found her passion. And believe me, I've known Amy for a bunch of years now, and this is her thing, and she's awesome at it. As her career progressed, she ultimately led a team of 75 for Comcast, and over the years has helped hundreds of advertisers and sales professionals achieve their most aspirational goals. She won a bunch of leadership awards. She's a 4-time President Club winner. And Amy most recently joined Advocado in its early stages as a chief revenue officer and has grown the business from the ground up, establishing a revenue base comprised of brands, agencies, and channel partners. And by the way, she has mastered the art of making excellent guac. So her skills are endless. She loves connecting with people. So reach out to Amy on LinkedIn if you want to connect with her. She is also kind enough to offer her excellent guac recipes. So, we often give out sales sheets and tidbits. Well, Amy's also going to share her guac recipe. Anyway, you can see why I wanted Amy to join us today. And Amy knows sales. So welcome, Amy. Hello.
Hello. I am so excited to see you and to be doing this with you. And I got to start by saying I love what you're doing with this idea of stripping down sales, because I think it's so easy to get off track and lose sight of the fundamentals. And I just think you're always such a strong voice for that. And you're helping a lot of people with this, Christine.
Thank you. I mean, I love it. Obviously, I love sales. I'm a sales nerd. Most people don't say that, but there are people that love building pivot spreadsheets, and that just makes me. So, we all have our place. But today, Amy, we're going to talk about intentionally moving the sale forward, advancing the sale, we're going to start our conversation. And it's something that is challenging for many, many people. I've heard this come up over and over again. I'm sure you have seen it as a sales leader as well. People get stuck. They get to a certain point in the sales journey and they get stuck. So we're going to talk about how to move it forward. And so first, for those who might not be familiar with advancing the sale, can you go over what that is and what that means to you?
Yeah, I think when I think about the sales process, I think about it almost like as constructing a ladder that's going to get you from the ground up to the top and get that deal done. And every rung on the ladder is pulling you up a little higher, a little higher, a little higher, but it's got to be done one step at a time. So advancing the sale means that there's a meaningful step that's going to help you pull up just a little bit further and get closer to that top of the ladder. I think that what often happens is we mistake advancing the sale for just still being in conversation, and we get stuck in maybe. And I say often that maybe is the most expensive word in the sales business. I would rather get to the top of the ladder and discover that there's not a deal there than be stuck in the middle, just sitting around. And you can feel it when week after week in your one-on-ones, it's still the same story. Like we're still in the very same place with a customer, and we haven't really gotten a step forward. And one of the things that I think you can do to really help accelerate that, is to not be afraid to hold your customers accountable for deliverables. They can be small, but when they owe you something, it gives you that meaningful reason to keep with them and keep moving that thing forward. So Is there somebody else in their organization that they need to bring forward for a conversation? Is there some documentation they need to give you, some questions they need to answer? If they've got something deliverable to you, it's a really, really helpful way to keep that sale advancing.
Yeah, I love that. I like to call that middle rung sales purgatory because,
Yeah.
right? And I love that
Yeah.
you did the ladder because, it's like, hey, if I got the sale, I'm in heaven. If I didn't get the sale, I'm in hell. I'm at the bottom. And it's, hey, look, you're in one place or the other, but in the middle, the purgatory just really stinks. And I think often the advancing of the sale gets confused with the continuation, right? Like,
Yep.
there isn't that intentional next step, which I want to talk about. It's sort of, I'll get back to you, we'll see, or send me some information, all these little things that, right, that sometimes when we're in sales, we go, oh, yes, we get excited, but it's really not an intentional advancement of the sale. And then you hit a little bit on the expectation of deliverables from clients. So let's dig a little deeper into that, because I don't think many people really think about the client owes me anything, right? Like, I'm doing the dance to get the business. Why does that client owe me anything? So what is an intentional next step on your ladder? And how does that tie in with these deliverables? And by the way, for all you that are watching us live, feel free to put things in the comments there on LinkedIn. We can see them and we will acknowledge and respond back. So if you've got questions or stories, relevant, just go ahead and throw those up in the chat. So go ahead, Amy.
Love that. So I think often we think about sales as being a performance. And if the salesperson puts on a really good show and really demonstrates that at the end you get the big ta-da and you win the game. But that's not what it is. It's a partnership. And it's a means of building a way for everybody to get something that they want and need along the way. And so if a customer is not truly engaged in that process, you're not going to necessarily have the same odds of getting that deal at the top of the ladder that you're hoping for. So I think that it's important to engage them by having them participate in the things that have to get done. There are things that a salesperson can't do. I mean, I can perform for you all day, meaning I can demo my product, I can show you my presentation, I can build relationship. But I can't know about your organization without you giving me information. I can't know what your problems and challenges are unless you tell me what they are. I can't know what the decision-making process is in your organization and who else is going to get involved. And I think we're going to get to that later. Without you helping me to understand that. So that is why delivering those, to-dos and getting some accountability out of your customer is a really important part of it being more of a partnership dance than just the salesperson on stage giving that beautiful performance.
Yeah. So Amy, Molly said it might be helpful to clarify between potential client versus existing client. So let's talk about that a little bit. How does that work?
Well, that's really important. And Molly, it's a great question. I think for prospects, you're doing two things at once. You're demonstrating the capabilities that you have and you're uncovering need, but you're also building trust along the way, and having those deliverables kind of hits both those notes, because you're getting the information you need to build the deal, but you're also building trust by owing the customer something and delivering it, and they're doing the same for you. When we get to the place where we have existing clients, I think this is a place where often the focus gets lost, that you feel like, well, we've got the deal now. When it comes time for renewal, we'll talk about what comes next. But I think having ongoing check-in meetings with your customer is really important, and making sure that those are agenda driven. So if you've got somebody that's locked in for an annual deal with you, that you're meeting with them every single month to find out what's changed in the business, where they are in the budget process, versus waiting for 10 months to pass and then white knuckling it going, well, gee, should we be re-upping? So
let's hold there for a minute.
Yeah.
That is so important. The sale doesn't end at the close, right? And it just, when you're talking about an existing client that you want to renew or you want to expand their sale and offer more products, do not wait till 2 months before the contract is up and go back in there. I think a lot of people learned that lesson this past year during our whole COVID experience, where businesses had to cut budget and do all kinds of, creative bookkeeping. And those AEs and those sales leaders in those businesses that were doing those check-ins probably kept the business. And the ones that kind of, disappeared after the contract was signed, maybe, I would think most likely did not. So that's so important, but keep going, because that was just such an important point that you made.
Well, it was a great question from Molly too, and I appreciate that. So, we're talking about advancing the sale, talking about building deliverables with customers, and this is a place where it can get really tedious when you're working with your manager inside the organization. Because for me, I know my team can sometimes get a little irritated with me when I'm asking them to keep drilling it down to something smaller. So, having a meaningful next rung on the ladder may be something as very specific as, contact so-and-so and ask this specific question. So sometimes when I'm looking like in our CRM, I'll see a next step that looks like meet with the digital team.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good thing to do, but what's the very next thing you need to do to get that meeting on the calendar? Who's going to owe you on the client side the coordination to get all the right people in the room? So maybe the next step really is reach out to Jill and ask her who needs to be in the meeting. So I'm always trying to narrow down, because there's two things about that. And a good test for this, Chris, is can someone else do it based on what you have recorded in the CRM? If I put my next step in,
yes,
and then I'm unexpectedly, out next week, can someone else pick up the ball and without any question know exactly what needs to be done? Meet with the digital team? No. Call Jill to find out who needs to be in the meeting? 100%.
Yes. I love that clarification, or way to frame it up to how to look at it, because it really does make a lot of sense when you think about, could someone just pick up and take over this activity or next step? And there's such a clear difference in that example of, what does that mean? Who do I talk to? How do I even go about doing this, versus a specific action item? And so that's what you mean about being intentional, right? So that's something that if you're a seller, you can think about for yourself. And as a sales leader, if you're wondering why maybe deals aren't progressing the way that you like, to look and see if there are intentional next steps happening in the sale, or as you mentioned to me, as we were talking in conversation, routine reach. And I love that phrase too. So can you rattle off a few routine reach things that might show up as a next step?
Oh, I think that's kind of one of those nebulous terms that gets, kind of stuck on a one-on-one report and doesn't really mean much. I think that when you've got prospects that are in that kind of nurturing phase, that's what your marketing automation is doing. You're just keeping a steady drumbeat with them to keep your brand in front of them. If that's the stage that you're at with a prospect, you're probably not in an opportunity where this is going to start happening. So we still need to be nurturing those prospects, but you bring up an important point, focusing your attention on those opportunities that, there's immediate need here. There's budget, there's authority, there's need, and there's a timeline that you can work to. There's where you need to be, I think, spending most of your time as a sales professional.
Yeah. That's great. And then we had someone that said a champion at the client level is critical to drive the interactions you're driving. How do you create that champion? $1 million question. How do you do that?
Question. Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of curiosity. I think if you are investing in really listening and asking the right questions and starting to sense the dynamics in a group, you will find that champion. And when I think of champion, here's how I mean it. And hopefully our user here agrees that this is somebody that's going to advocate for you along the way to the deal. They're the person that's going to give you kind of the inside scoop of what the internal conversations are when you're not in the room. They're the ones that are going to tell you, this is the person you really have to help get over. And that's a really critical value add when you're in the sales process. And it just takes a ton of real relationship investment. You have to really be willing to listen and be curious in the beginning. Ask all the questions that help you figure out how is this organization really laid out, and what are the dynamics. Because if you can find that champion early, it's a huge advantage, and it will help differentiate you from competition as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. Um, so tying into the conversation with advancing the sales, we promised some conversation about getting buy-in from multiple decision makers. And I know this shows itself in so many different ways. Like what you do every day, you have different organizations that have to work together and coordinate
Right.
to make a product work. In other sales industries, it might be partners or spouses or board of directors,
Mm,
um, a team of people that need to get buy-in on a decision. And I know frequently we get excited if we're getting buy-in from a person and then realize this is not the only piece of the puzzle here in order for the sale to move forward. So let's talk about that. What might this look like and how do we not get stuck?
yeah. Well, this is a big thing that we've been learning in our business. We have an advertising technology and data platform. And so in the advertising business, the stakeholders in an opportunity might be the chief marketing officer at a brand, their advertising agency that builds their creative strategy and makes their television commercials, and maybe even another agency that handles their digital advertising. And maybe there's even a couple of those, one that handles their search and one that handles their social. So if you keep looking, you'll keep finding. So the first thing is there may only be one decision maker, but rarely is there only one stakeholder. So the test for me
Love
is,
that. Hold on. I don't want to interrupt, but one decision maker, but rarely. No, what did you say that? Say that
yeah,
again.
there may be one decision maker, and the decision maker is the person that can say yes when everyone else says no. That's how
Yes,
you know who the decision maker is, who can override everybody, right?
but
The
multiple
stake
stakeholders. Yeah.
always there. I just can't even think of a business case in the modern world where there would be a single person who's the only person that cares about any product. They just can't. There's going to be somebody who has to approve the purchase of it, somebody that has to vet out the competitive landscape with it, or maybe even construct an RFP. There may be somebody that is going to be a user of it, somebody that's going to be the beneficiary of the results of it, and maybe even external consultants and agencies involved too. Boards of
Right.
directors, as you point out.
Yes.
So, just assume. So, two things: assume that there's way more behind the person you're initially engaged with, and go find those people. Ask questions. Ask questions. Curiosity is the most I think valuable characteristic of a great salesperson. Second thing is get going on that early in the process, because what you don't want to do is get down the road and then discover that there are stakeholders that have been left out and you've missed the opportunity to build consensus when it was easier. Because when
Right.
people feel left out, they may feel a little resentful. They may have been doing work to investigate and engage with a competitor. And now, there's conflict there. There's like all kinds of things that can happen that you're not aware of
Sure.
if you're not getting involved with those stakeholders early. So
Right.
be curious, ask thoughtful questions to figure out, who is it that's really going to use this? Tell me what the decision-making process will be like. There's just all kinds of resources for knowing what questions to ask. But if you're curious and you find those people and you engage with them early, you're going to help yourself get all those rungs up the ladder.
Yes. I mean, I think if something as simple as, I mean, there's so much going on in tech sales right now because there's so much technology
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yep.
Who's including IT? You think you've made an amazing sale, and then IT comes in at the end and says, well, that's not going to work for us. We can't
Yep.
handle it, or we have to do a $500,000 upgrade to make it work. And if you had known something like that early on to have that conversation to maybe make it work, I mean, nobody likes to see something like that blow up at the end because there were all these people behind the scenes, as you mentioned.
Absolutely. And people need to be invited into the process of prioritizing this work. So even if
Mhm.
they think your stuff is great, they just may not have time to do what they need to do. And I'll tell you, if you're selling anything that involves interacting with a customer's website, you're going to be involved with information security, especially in light of
Right.
new security concerns and privacy practices that are being implemented across the industry. So if you're in that space at all, and you all already know this, get into the technical side of things early, and bring others from your organization in who can go really head to head with those people and speak to them
Right.
here. You're
Right.
not the only person that I always think of the seller as being kind of the conductor of the orchestra, and
Yes.
your orchestra has people behind you that you need to direct and tell them, when is it time for our technical people to step forward and play a little louder? When is it time for our financial people to get involved? When's it time for our counsel to get involved if we're building an agreement or something like that? So your job as the seller is to tell all those people when to play a little louder.
Right. I love that analogy. It makes so much sense. And I love you're talking about the partnership within your team on your side too, because yeah, as sellers, we may think we're able to sell something to someone. Like we're still on the tech example, and maybe we're not. And we can get that intel on our side before we even have the conversation with the customer. So we can really offer even greater solutions to how to make it all work beyond what we were even thinking, and to bring those people along to meet in the middle, the meeting of the minds, the tech expert with the other tech expert, or whatever the other teammate might be, when you're making a sale. I love that.
Yeah, and that's a great step. That's a great rung on the ladder. Is all right. The next thing we need to do is we need to have your chief technical officer talk to ours to discuss integration. When can we get that on the calendar? So that is an example of a meaningful step toward advancing the sale that gets you, closer and closer to the top, and getting you to a yes or a no. And for sales leaders out there, don't forget that no is a really good answer in sales. It's way better than maybe. And getting to a fast no is a really valuable thing. So when that happens in your organization, take a minute to celebrate it. It may not be the outcome you were looking for, but it is a successful sales process when you get to, no, or not right at this time, or whatever it may be. Maybe
Right.
not the outcome you were looking for, but please be sure that you haven't created fear in your sales organization that keeps people stuck in maybe because they're worried about what happens if it gets to no. Don't be that.
That is, oh, I love that. You're so right. Get to know, get to yes or get to know. And I know a lot of us talk about that, but it is so important. I know it's tough when you're trying to make a sale, or you're the manager of a team that wants to hit budget or goal. And so you hang in there, you get strung along, and where it really costs you money, because now we're talking about costing you money, not generating revenue. We're talking about losing revenue, because that time and energy that that seller, that team, that manager, whoever it is expending upon chasing down something that really is not going to happen right now, or is not a good fit, is time and energy that could be expended on other things, on other potential clients, on growing existing clients. And so you essentially waste all those resources, um, chasing and chasing. And the culture piece is really important too. I'm glad you brought that up. You cannot have that fear factor in your office, because people will hang on. And then getting back to an intentional advancing the sale, you'll see all kinds of weird stuff of next steps, because no one wants to say there really is no next step. They've gone dark, right? So
Right.
now it's, maybe they'll just randomly send something or pop in or whatever it is, just to feel like I'm still taking steps, because I don't want to have to tell the boss that this thing is dead.
Yeah,
Um,
and is it really a step to reach out and say, "Hey, just checking in, I know you were gonna regroup internally." Those are all kinds of little, red flag words that,
right.
there's not really an opportunity here. But sometimes it can be really hard to find meaningful ways to reach out, and a little trick, it's just such a small thing, and maybe everybody that's listening is already doing this, but set up Google alerts for all of your prospects so that when they are in the news, especially in the advertising industry, there's so many trades and publications and so much mention of a lot of the people that we're working with that it's really kind of hard to scan the landscape. But when you set up those alerts, you're going to find those big announcements, press releases, partnerships, things that they're doing, they get them in the news, and you can grab that and say, hey, I read this and it got me thinking about the conversation that we were having about such and such. But think about how you can bring value to every interaction with your prospect or with your customer. And when you think about yourself as being a value add to their world, you will find yourself getting closer and closer in that inner circle.
Mhm.
You're the call that they take. You are the email they respond to because they know they're going to get something great out of it. I really
Yes.
recommend, there's a ton of literature and everybody ascribes to a different kind of sales philosophy, but I was very intrigued by reading the Challenger sale. And I think it really talks about that distinction of bringing value. There's some really good
Yes.
stuff in there. If you haven't read it, do it now because it was based on research that was done on sales organizations coming out of the 08-09 recession. And I think
Mhm.
that coming out of this pandemic, although the economic conditions are different, the amount of change is similar. We're coming out of something that is going to have changed us forever and going back to those Challenger principles of being valuable to your customer and all those kinds of things that really separated the best sellers from the best relationship builders when it
Yes.
mattered will be valuable now.
It's 100%. I just actually started rereading that book a week ago. It's so funny that you mentioned it. And one of the things that I would mention to people that I've worked with, and relationships important, right? Because ideally we don't want to do business with people we don't like. So you do want to like the person you're doing business with. However, if that's all you have, you will get cut. And it's a harsh conversation I've had to have with sellers. Your client will feel bad because they do like you. They will feel bad, but ultimately, they will use the competition if that other product or service is going to help them with their business and solve their problems. So if you're not bringing those solutions, those strategic ideas to the relationship, you're buying time till you get cut. And
Right.
nobody likes to hear that. But it's the truth
Yeah.
because a business owner has to run their business. They have to make decisions that are in the best place for the business. And the relationship will not, be at the top of that list and they will feel bad. And I've seen it happen. I'm sure you have. The client feels bad, but they still make that change. And
Yeah.
so the
Gotta
solution
eat,
is so important.
I had a colleague that described that relationship focus as, are you just a professional visitor? And I think that's a really, really compelling way to think about it
Oh,
because, it's great when you got somebody who really likes you and who you build that rapport and it's so great to interact with them. But if you're not able to really articulate the value you're bringing to them, then you may just be a professional visitor and that's going to put you in jeopardy.
yes.
So I think
Yes.
that's a really important
With the
thing.
handout, right? Professional visitor with the handout. And then
Yes.
like, hey, what do you got for me today? So analogy way back when I first started selling, like a goldfish, right? So goldfish know when you come to their bowl, they come up and they make that little guppy face, like and if you're just that professional visitor, you're just like showing up, waiting for someone to drop a crumb in your mouth. And and who wants to be perceived that way? Um,
Nobody. And that's, there's so many analogies. That one's funny, but I do want to acknowledge and I feel it in my business maybe more than I ever did in my previous career because I am an actively selling, leader in our company. Sales is hard. It's hard
yes,
even when you're really good at it. And so this idea of getting back to the fundamentals, really making sure that you got your blocking and tackling right is a good place to go when you find yourself a little stuck. And that's where we started. It is easy. The best of us find ourselves there. And I just love how you're opening up these conversations to validate that for people that have made this their life's work. It's
mhm,
easy, it's easy to find yourself in that sales purgatory, as you put it.
yes,
And so
it
it's
is
good to
hard.
know that you've got a community of people that can
Yeah.
support one another when you get there.
Yeah. I just was rewatching a video clip, which I think I'm going to use, from A
Hmm.
League of Their Own. And Tom Hanks says, but the hard is what makes it good, right?
Yeah,
It's easy to quit, but it's the hard that makes it good. And one of the things that I always want to have salespeople, sales leaders, anyone in sales organization to think about is to feel really proud of where they are and what they do, because still, right, our industry it gets a bad rap because of years of bad practices, and still people out there who aren't doing it the right way. But for those of us who are, and I know everyone here is,
of course.
it is a skill and it is a practice.
Yeah,
And we are continually learning. We are continually evolving. I mean, I love to talk to salespeople, not just because, we have the sales piece in common, but do you know how much stuff they know about so many different industries, from the client indirect, right? Like we learn so much from our clients because we're bringing value. We're learning in our industry, where what's going on in the economy. There's so much we do in the sales world. My vision one day is that everybody, like, shoulders back, chin up, says, yeah, I'm a salesperson. I'm a BDR. I'm a sales manager. Whatever it is, that they do that with pride, and then people look at them and they're like, whoa.
yeah, right. Like when it becomes equivalent to I'm an astronaut, that would be great. Well, you bring up a great point about the knowledge base, because people who are sales professionals do apply themselves to understanding more about different categories and different businesses than probably any other profession, especially if you're selling something that goes across different verticals. But now that you say that, I'm thinking through my Rolodex of great salespeople who are experts in businesses that they've never worked in, because they
Yes.
have to sell to them. And that to me is probably a pretty good evidence that you've got a really great salesperson on your hands, is when they're knowledgeable about other categories in that way and know how they work.
Yes.
Good
Yeah.
stuff.
Wesley had asked, what are
Yeah.
signals you're in the maybe trap, and is it time to get out?
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people are probably, maybe bopping out, but do we want to talk about that real quickly? And just so everyone on the LinkedIn Live knows, I do have a one-sheeter on that too. So if you're interested in that, let me know. Just ping me, leave it in the comments, or DM me, and I'll get that over to you. But so let's talk about that. What are the signs that you're in that trap?
Well, I think there are a few. One is you can't get the customer to commit time to you, and you get a lot of push off language about, can we connect next week, and you get kind of a nebulous pushback on that. Or if they're scheduling meetings and they're continually being rescheduled, particularly at the last minute, which means generally, I forgot this meeting was coming up and I'm not ready to have it. That lets you know
Mhm.
there's some mind share there. I think that's important. Um, I think sometimes it takes someone else to help you see that you're stuck. So I think getting the observation of other people that, hey, we've been talking about this prospect in the exact same way for some time now. Are we on a treadmill here? So getting some outside perspective about it. Looking backward is helpful. Have we moved it
Mhm.
forward so far? And do we have that next, rung on the ladder that we're aiming for? And am I kind of idling in a particular step? There's lots of
Mhm.
ways to see the sign. I think the more important part of what Wes is asking here is, how do you know when it's time to cut bait?
Right.
And it can feel very risky to say, hey, I just want to ask you straight out, is now really the right time for us to be having this conversation?
Hallelujah. That's what I was
Do
going to say. Ask
it.
the question.
Ask the question. You will
Ask the
not.
question.
If they want your stuff, they're not going to change their mind because you asked them that. If they,
Absolutely.
they'll say, "Oh, no, 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 no. I'm telling you, we're just
Right.
having a little bit of a, I just need to delay the timeline a little bit." They will tell you, but if you give them permission to get out of it, sometimes people are just too nice. And remember, they like you. They don't want to hurt
Right.
your feelings. So if you say, "Hey, listen, I can't help but notice that we've canceled this meeting at the last minute a couple of times. If this isn't the right time for you, I want you to feel all the room in the world to tell me, and we can, part friends right here, and I can reach out to you in November." Would something like that work better for you?
I
Try
love
it.
that. People are scared to do that. People are scared to, and it goes back to, right, like, we don't really want to hear the no, or maybe we'll feel like there'll be some sort of negative retribution in the office.
Mhm.
um, because not only will you'll get the answer yes or no, but you'll find out probably more, right? Like you were saying, oh no, 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 we do want to move forward, but we've just had this change in staff, or we are upgrading our computer system and everybody's just been like, it's been nuts here and we haven't had time to think about anything else. You get more information if you ask the question. And it's fair to ask the question. You're not being a jerk by asking the question. Some people feel like it's an uncomfortable thing, like, am I
Mm.
being pushy? No, you were not being pushy. Someone has agreed to have a conversation with you. Maybe they've agreed to provide you with pieces of information that you need to make the proposal, or give them specs, whatever it may be. If you're not getting that, then just ask the question. And it's not pushy or rude or anything bad. In fact, it's very professional and it helps everybody. So, like Josh says, we often hang on for dear life out of fear to expose the lack of overflowing pipeline, right? And yeah, no one wants to cross off that client off their list, but better than to waste the time and energy and get the information. Oh, okay. So you've just redone your whole computer system. Should we really just put this off till X so I'm not in your hair and you can focus on that? We
Right.
all can breathe, right?
Yeah. And to Josh's point, I think this is a real thing. We don't want to expose ourselves. Hey, naked sales, expose ourselves. Get it? See what I did there?
Yes. Thank you for working that in.
You're well. I love it so much. This is really, really important because this, for people that are selling, if you're thinking that maybe it's time for you to make a move, like we've just talked about with one of your purgatory prospects, engage your sales leader, your manager in that before you do it.
Yeah.
So that there is no exposure, because everybody knows this is the move I'm making, and we know it could lead us to, yeah, now's not the right time. Let's both consider
Mhm.
that a win, because it's better than me wasting time on this and coming back and telling you the same story week after week. So if you feel like you want to make that move, um, align with your manager about making it, and then that exposure fear hopefully diminishes a little bit, because it's a real thing. Look, we those of us who love sales love the idea that we can control outcomes, and we can do things intentionally that make the rungs on the ladder a little shorter and a little more
Mhm.
quick in succession. We can do those things, and that is what makes us awesome. But we can't really truly control everything, and that's why I think that exposure can feel so very threatening. It's just because of the way we're wired. So I think that's a real thing, and I'm really, really glad Joshua brought that up.
Yeah, we like to win too, right?
You do. I do.
Let's win. Well, Amy, I know you've got a busy day ahead of you. I've loved the conversation. Thanks for all the comments and questions too.
Yeah, great stuff.
I'll be here Wednesdays at 11:30 live with Naked Sales on LinkedIn, with other great guests like Amy Bobchek. So be sure to put it on your calendar. Connect with me or follow me on LinkedIn if we're not already, so you don't miss it. You can see all the great guests. Amy, it's been a pleasure. Again, Amy is Chief Revenue Officer at Advocado. She's always open to connecting. So connect with her on LinkedIn. Ping her if you want her guacamole recipe, which I think I might need to have. She's great with avocado punch. I don't actually call avocados anymore. I kind of
I
call
don't
them
either.
avocado.
I can't do
Um,
it.
but thank you, Amy. It was awesome. It was fun. You shared a lot of great tidbits. So I hope everyone kind of walked away with at least 2 or 3 things that will help them with their sales game, with advancing the sale, with selling to multiple decision makers. It was great.
Thanks. I agree. And Chris, just to put in a plug for you, there's nobody better at this game than you. And I love how you're making yourself a resource for those of us who have committed ourselves to this profession. So I know when you tell people you've got one sheets for them and resources for them and all those kinds of things, that you really mean it. You are a generous expert in this space, and we're all lucky to have you around. So I'll be joining you every Wednesday to learn from you and your
Awesome.
future guests. Thank you.
Yeah, we're all in this together, right? Like we
Yeah, we
gotta
sure are.
We got to stick together, us sales peeps. We got to be in the tribe and keep beating the drum and being proud and motivating each other. And remember, the hard is good. The hard is good. It is easy to quit sales. It is harder to stay in sales and be successful at sales and do all the hard things that we do every day. Because as Amy said, this is not easy. And we'll talk about making things better, but it is not easy. And be proud of what you do. You still got a half a day today, or longer if you're on the West Coast. So it might just be the beginning of your day if you're out West. So, go out and crush it. Make the most of it. We're here cheering for you. Go get them.
Love it.
And
Thanks,
thank you.
Chris.
Naked Sales, we're out.